Okay, welcome to the Embodiment Conference main stage, hosted by me, Mark, and of course, Daniela. Today we have a treat, Dr. Stephen Porges, Mr. Polyvagal Theory. I think he doesn't need much introduction for people that know about trauma. He's extremely well qualified and just a lovely bloke too. We've got to know him a little bit through the conference and one-day sessions. And yeah, I very much enjoy that Stephen practices in person what his theories talk about in theory, and that's a big deal. So Stephen, you are very, very welcome.
Thank you, Mark. It's really a pleasure to be here and to kind of play with you with the concept of embodiment as a interesting personal and also interactive journey. So thank you for having me here.
You're very welcome. We've got this down as an interview. So is that your understanding as well, Stephen? I just want to check.
It is mine, and I will tell you why. I'd much rather do an interview than a presentation, because an interview creates connectedness. A presentation is in many ways dissociative, or disembodiment. And I really enjoy interviews because they're spontaneous. I get to know people like you better, and I get to connect with people who are watching. So if there's a choice, take the choice of interacting with others, because we are a connected species.
Right, it feels more aligned with your work than just talking at people from afar for an hour, right? To actually have a relationship and a conversation.
Yeah, it's in a sense, one is pleasant and the other is work. So I gravitate to the pleasant one, which is actually even more on a journey of discovery than presentation, which has its pragmatic, pedantic features, which I'd rather not express.
Okay, cool. So there's a question here that's very popular. Can you guide us through a little practice live that can help our vagus nerve, something brief and easy?
Well, Mark and I are doing one. We're interacting with each other. We're having reciprocity. But the exercise that you can do, because really what you're saying is there are times in your day where your autonomic nervous system is destabilizing and you're losing your sense of resource. The most potent and easily accessible method is through breath. And really what happens is when we exhale slowly, the vagal influence, the ventral vagal influence on our heart is increased. And when we inhale slowly, we turn it off. So we now know that there are two mechanisms we can use to change our autonomic state. One is increasing exhalation, which will be calming. And the other one is increasing inhalation, which will be energizing. But remember, energizing sometimes leads to anxiety and a little bit of panic. So that a lot of people who are anxious are actually huffing and only saying one word or two on their breath. The exercise that I often have people do is actually extend the duration of their phrases. Just stick more words into their phrase before they take a breath. And it will be amazingly calming. So the mechanism is when we exhale, the vagus is functional. When we inhale, it gets kind of dampened or withdrawn. If we breathe with the abdominal muscles pushing down our abdomen, it actually will amplify that vagal influence when we exhale. So doing a deep inhalation, pushing our abdomen down, and then very slowly exhaling will calm us down.
Thank you. So often I hear in yoga to elongate the out breath, and what you're saying is actually adding more words into one's phrasing will do that for you.
Or the other one is play a wind instrument. You have no choice. So, which is where I came from, because I was a clarinetist when I was young, and actually that was my state regulator, was playing music, because that's what you had to do. The other part of what I learned when I do these little exercises and workshops is what the people doing the exercises report. They report that if they extend the duration of their inhalation, so they inhale longer and short inhalation, they see the person across from them, the observer of their task, as being very evaluative of them. And they start thinking, did I do something wrong? Am I not breathing it correctly? If they reverse with a more rapid inhalation and a slow exhalation, they start thinking, oh, what an attractive person. I'd like to get to know that person.
Casey is asking about the fawning response. It might be good to define that as opposed to kind of a choiceful peacekeeping. So, do you have any sense of what the fawning response is as part of your model?
Well, see, again, there are words that start to come into the dialogue, like appeasement came in about a year ago into my talks. People started asking me that. Fawnings come in a sense in the past year. And I think if fawning is, in a sense, giving up, just like rolling on your back, what is the physiology of that? I think it may be more in a dissociative realm as opposed to, in a sense, feeling totally safe. So let's talk about dissociation for a moment. Uh, in polyvagal theory, if you're under life threat, there's a possibility of your body functionally shutting down, meaning you'd pass out or appear to be dead. This is potentially lethal to mammals because you're not getting enough oxygen to your brain. So the adaptive adjustment to death feigning or shutting down is dissociative, where you're maintaining blood flow to your brain and muscle tone to your limbs, but you go someplace else. So dissociation becomes an adaptive function. I think fawning is part of this cascade of, in a sense, trying to get yourself, or not, I say trying, you see, I'm using intentionality words when I really am talking about reflexes that are embedded in the body. So let's say that it's the nervous system's attempt to help you survive. So fawning, just like dissociation and death feigning, are not intentional behaviors that we can recruit. They are more wired reflexes or adaptive reflex that our body will go into.
I've got a question for you, actually, Stephen. I get asked a lot by people, I don't have any money and I need trauma help.
Yeah.
What people do who can't afford some of that stuff and they find themselves, with some serious trauma symptoms?
All the organizations, whether you were talking about internal family systems with Dick Schwartz or somatic experience like Peter Levine, all these have some pro bono uh, places, or some people will take some on. They're very, in a sense, culturally conscious and compassionate in organizations. They want to be helpful to others. But therapists are also human beings that need to make uh, a living. Uh, but the other part, and I'll tell you where I've been focusing on this, and that is, can I be helpful to those who experience trauma by helping them develop a different personal narrative of their own experiences? And that's where polyvagal theory has been helpful to people who have had trauma. They've read the theory and suddenly their life makes sense to them. And that making sense to them in a way is a journey towards healing. I've created the Traumatic Stress Research Consortium, which has as its goal uh, to create a documentary. This is not a movie, but a database of what it is to be traumatized. What does it come? What comes with this
I
package?
wonder if they were in the last sort of 5 minutes here, if there can something on hope here in that for the first time in human history, the species is learning about trauma. I mean, 500,000 people, it's not nothing, 500,000 people at this conference in terms of, over half of them have already seen a session. The trauma ones are the most popular. They'll be affecting another 10, 20 million people. I mean,
Yeah.
we've got people in Russia, Saudi Arabia, people all over the world are part of this event. And it feels hopeful, even against the backdrop of politics and COVID and everything else. It feels deeply hopeful.
Yeah, I really like to respond to the optimistic aspect of not just the Embodiment Conference, but also in terms of polyvagal theory. Polyvagal theory is a theory of optimism because it says if we understand the mechanisms and we understand the portals to uh, re-energize or retune that autonomic nervous system, our experience in living can be optimized, that we can rehabilitate, we can optimize the human experience. I used to use the phrase, what is the goal of all this? And I would say it's to optimize the human experience, because what we're learning from the world of trauma is the lives of so many people have been, in a sense, limited by their trauma history. And from a polyvagal perspective, that's really saying is that their trauma history has retuned their autonomic nervous system to keep them alive and to be defensive. But if we give the cues of safety and the context is safe, that autonomic nervous system can be retuned with the product of becoming a more spontaneously socially engaging individual capable of co-regulating with others.
Do you think the current context of sort of unsafety around health or politics, or, there's a few, but they're two big ones, can lead to old traumas coming up, or, or is it the opposite? Does it give us this opportunity to actually to look at things? What's your take on how the current
Well,
context
this
impacts?
is just like the difference between empathy and compassion. Are the cues triggering feelings that are similar or uncovering our reactions of defense? Or are we, in a sense, seeing it and then having a sufficient sense of self that we see vulnerabilities without falling into those vulnerabilities? I think it's varied. I think we have to first understand that we can have interventions on ourselves which stabilize our physiological state to make us more resilient. And with that resilience, we can then become more compassionate. So I'm going to flip this totally around and say, what is embodiment to me? Embodiment to me is when the nervous system is doing its job and regulating our visceral organs through homeostatic processes, and we're not in a state of defense reacting to threat. And then there's, with embodiment, there's the unfolding of what it is to be a human, which has all these wonderful emergent properties of co-regulating, engaging others, and also traveling to different parts of our brain to do creative intellectual work. So it's not like I'm all in the body, there's no intellect. I'm saying if my body is safe, wow, look at all the intellectual things I can do because I don't have to be concerned about being hurt.
So much here, Stephen. It's super rich, and I've loved it as ever. Maybe lastly, then, people out there with trauma, maybe suffering, we do hear about this, meet people in the conference. What would be your message to them if somebody's, really suffering, maybe sleep disturbances or addiction issues related to trauma? What would you say to them?
Well, the first thing is that, okay, what I normally hear when we get all these issues, one, there's a trauma history. And number two, there's a series of common, let's use the term medically unexplained symptoms. So it's not merely they feel bad or not sleeping, they have irritable bowel, fibromyalgia, they have a lot of autonomic, atypical autonomic regulations. I would basically say, let us talk about the script that you're in. Your body is in a state of threat and defense, and that is what is going on. You don't have uh, the disease that they're, in a sense, trying to label themselves as having, whether it's a mental health disease or comorbid physical health. The primary theme we want to tell them is your nervous system is reacting to the world as if the world is dangerous and has moved you into physiological states that are very adaptive for the short term when you're under threat. But when you're in this state chronically, it starts interfering with the nervous system's capacity to regulate the organs in your body, meaning that the progression, disruption of this neural homeostatic function will result in end organ damage. And it's the end organ damage that brings people into internal medicine, into surgery, and into disease labeling. But the nervous system regulation of the organ, if it gets disrupted, basically puts that individual on a trajectory of chronic disease. So what I'm trying to say is uh, the narrative is that if your body is in a state of threat, the body is going to do what it can do, and it does that at great expense. And the great expense is to monitor and serve the health, growth, and restoration functions of your organs.
So we always go back, Stephen, to the speaker for the final word, and we're going to put a top tip or a single sentence quote from every presenter into a book. So what would you like yours to be, sir?
Well, okay, let's see where we go with this one. Basically, listen to your body. And as you listen to your body tells you whether you're in a world of safety and trust or you're in a world of threat. And if you get cues of threat, take a deep breath and see if you can exhale slowly and calm yourself down. And then does the world look more pleasant to you?
Stephen Porges, thank you very much for joining us at the Embodiment Conference. Thank you. I'll see you again, sir.